Councillor Jackie Flood will not be here this evening. Vice Chair Finley Rothaus will be. He's just not here at the moment. We'll all clap when he enters, right? Okay, announcements. Here he comes. Everybody clap. Here we go. Oh, payback's going to be, you know what? He'll get me back. I don't believe we actually did that. Okay. Announcement. The Merrimack Town Council would like to offer our condolences to the family and friends of Karsten Bed Hahn, who passed away on Saturday, February 24th at the age of 101.
Wow.
Bud resided in Merrimack for over 50 years, and on August 18, 2016, was awarded the Boston Post cane as Merrimack's oldest citizen. As a lifelong Boy Scout and attaining the highest rank of Eagle Scout, Bud went on to become a troop leader and also serving as a the Scouting Commissioner and advisor. Could I please have a moment of silence? Thank you very much, Bud. I know he was very pleased with that Boston cane. So now we will be looking for another recipient. Okay, Thursday, March 22nd at 7 p.m. in the Matthew Thornton Room, there will be another regular Town Council meeting. On Thursday, March 29th, there will be a non-public meeting. Tuesday, April 10th at 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at all three polling locations will be the voting day. James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, the Merrimack Middle School, and St. John Newman Church. Please contact the Town Clerk's office at 424-3651 to determine if you have any question about where you should be attending for the voting. You can call the Town Clerk, or you can also contact the New Hampshire Secretary of State website. That also has the information. Thursday, April 12th at 7 p.m. is also another Town Council regular meeting, and hopefully our snow days will be done by then. Okay, PFOA updates. I want to do a couple first. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead, Eileen. Sorry.
Okay, not as important as the next topic,
right.
but so 2018 dog licenses are now available at the town clerk's offices. Dog licenses are due by April 30th. The 26th annual Easter egg hunt is scheduled for Saturday, March 24th from 10 to 11:30. However, due to significant amount of snow that we've recently received, the event is most likely going to get postponed into April. A final decision will be made on Monday, March 19th, and we would send out a press release at that time with a new date. And just an FYI, I believe this is the second year where they had no snow for the Christmas parade or the holiday
The Winter
walk,
Carnival?
Winter Carnival, and a foot of snow at Wasserman Park for the Easter egg hunt. So go figure that out.
I'll say yes, Peter.
Eileen, and I think this is new, maybe Captain Dudash can say, but I got my notice for the dog license, and now they're asking for a photograph of your dog to include it, and I think that's awesome. I think that's a great idea, because I know over the years, not only did you find something, but if you could look up somebody's dog with their picture, I think that's a pretty nice idea. Good thinking on the canine officer part. Yes,
A dog mugshot. We all set? Okay, a couple of announcements I'd like to make before we go. We received information from Clark Freeze from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services that they are planning a town-wide, meaning 3 towns, Litchfield, Merrimack, and Bedford. They want a town meeting for all 3 towns to attend. We don't know specifics, but we do know it's related to the St. Cobain DES negotiations. So it sounds like they want to be able to announce something. They haven't announced it to us. Go right ahead.
I have been asked to give dates. Myself and Litchfield and Bedford have been asked to give dates in the next over the next 3 weeks as to when our public facilities might be available with capacity for up to 200 people. So just keep your eyes peeled because the meeting could be as early as next week.
We'll make sure we have that on the website, and we'll make an
Right,
announcement.
and I don't know that for a fact, but he did say in the next 3 weeks.
Okay. The second thing is we've also received an email, but I have a hard copy here, and this is going to be, it is already available on the website, right? Letter from DES to St. Cobain. The subject is Stormwater and Surface Water Investigation Summary Report, and it does talk about stormwater, dry, wet conditions, testing going into the river, and that is available already on the website now. Okay, so that can be downloaded. We had that done today. We received it yesterday. Okay. Bill or Peter, anything?
Nothing as it relates to the advisory group. I have a question of the town manager. They asked for a facility to hold 200 people. Do we honestly think we're going to have just 200 people coming to this meeting?
I can only tell you what he asked for.
Can we make sure that I'm presuming we're looking at the all-purpose room at JMU's,
Right. So
which holds what, 750?
I don't know, but they asked for JMU's as one of the potential facilities, and what their availability was. And as I said, the other communities have also been asked.
I would
come
encourage
with
to
dates.
find the largest room possible to make sure that we can accommodate.
Yep, I only gave them JMU's for ourselves.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
And then follow-up, Madam Chair, if I could.
Absolutely.
The New Hampshire Drinking Water and Groundwater Advisory Commission met on Monday. Criteria has been created. We have a set of rules that are in place. We actually have an application in place for water authorities and municipalities to apply for either grants or loans directly from the trust fund from which the Drinking and Groundwater Commission manages. There will be a public hearing on the application in the process on April 18th at one of the state buildings on Hazen Drive. And as soon as I get more information, I can pass that along to you to have the town manager post on.
Is there criteria as to what you can apply for?
Correct.
There is or isn't?
There is. It's
Okay. And
what you can apply for.
that's what they're putting together?
That's correct.
I see, I'm sorry.
So if you have issues regarding water quality, exploration, you're looking to expand infrastructure, it's similar to the loan that we voted on to approve as it relates to the Turkey Hill pump station. It's the same idea. Like town of Amherst applies for funding to be able to work on one of their wells. They could come to us and make application. That would be up to the commission to either
Now,
approve.
that's a loan, not a grant, right?
It's both a loan and or a grant. You can apply for one or the other.
But the pumping, I believe, is a loan.
Correct.
Okay.
As it relates to us, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything, Pete? All set? Okay. Highway garage project update. Finley, anything? Paul?
We met with our consulting team, finalizing numbers. We'll have better numbers for you by March 22nd on the project. With all the snow, looks like our groundbreaking will be delayed, and we would like to come in front of the council one last time once everything is finalized to do a presentation for the town council to include color scheme and things of that sort, if you would like that.
Do I get 4 votes over them
Of course.
on the color?
Jackie represents you.
That's true, that's true. Okay, comments from the press or public. Remember, it has to be at least 3 minutes. Not at least, no more than 3 minutes. Whatever your pleasure.
Hi there, Wendy Thomas from 10 Wildcat Falls. I've been trying to get PFOA blood concentration work for my entire family who has lived in our house for 25 years with contaminated water. I contacted someone at DES who sent me to someone at DHHS, and I was told that because I was over 3 miles away, we are considered outside of the zone of contamination. I want to remind you that our well tested 45 parts per trillion by the state, and it showed the chemical fingerprint of Saint-Gobain. We are clearly in the contamination zone. According to several states, which have lowered their maximum levels due to scientific evidence of danger to children, our water is too dangerous to drink. We've been buying bottled water. With 5 adults and 2 dogs in our house, we go through approximately 25 gallons of water a week. If we continue at this rate, it would cost us approximately $1,000 a year just to drink clean water. It has become very expensive to live in Merrimack. We have purchased a whole house filtration system with an RO, which is reverse osmosis, POU, point of use filter, at a cost of $1,100. The filtration unit requires new filters on a regular basis, costing approximately $250 each time. We are currently looking for a plumber to install the system, which will add to the cost. And once it is installed, the water from the single point of use faucet will be clean. But that still leaves a town with dirty water. I no longer visit local coffee shops made with contaminated town water. I no longer drink water at a local restaurant and think twice about what I order. Was it cooked in water? My daughter brings water to drink while at school. Why wouldn't we take these precautions? The town has not done the due diligence needed to clean the water. I am a private well owner who lives in a town with contaminated water. The water in our house will soon be cleaned, but that doesn't mean that my neighbors and residents of this town won't continue to be exposed to carcinogenic chemicals. At the recent MVD meeting, I mentioned that as a private well owner, I still paid money to MVD. That made me a customer. That's for the hydrant, said Lon. I still paid it. I made the check out to MVD, and they cashed it. They were happy to take my money, but not call me a customer. I live in Merrimack. I have every right to be as concerned about our town's water as any other resident. PFOA concentration is most harmful at lower body weights. It particularly affects small animals like cats and dogs, and it affects children. We should all be concerned about PFOA in our water in particular. We owe it to the children of Merrimack to be concerned. It is clear that the MVD is in over their heads. We must change direction for the health of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Anyone else?
Is it on? Hello? Hello. Lorraine Allen,
I'll
16 French Court. I wanted to update you on, Bill, you had asked ages ago for the DHHS to reach out to New Hampshire Medical Association. So some of us were invited as stakeholders, also some moms from the PEAS site, to go up and meet with them on February 15th. They had a gentleman called Dr. Alan Wolf come up from Boston from the Pediatric Environmental Health Unit. So my understanding is he is now doing some consulting work with DHHS. So the presentation was pretty good in terms of toxicology, and he was very good with the PowerPoint and very slick for a gray-haired man. I'm always impressed over a certain age when you can do that stuff. So it was going well, and then all of a sudden it took a little turn, and he started talking about what we heard way back in our original meeting with DHHS. There's no research, there's no evidence, and he presented slides that were from 2011 and 2012, and over the last year I feel as though I should have an honorary doctorate in this area some days. I really do. Because as I looked at this information, I was quite aware that it was not current. And I am not talking about anecdotal studies. I'm talking about peer-reviewed. I'm talking about folks such as Judith Enck, the ex-director of the EPA, Linda Birnbaum, the director of the National Institute for Toxicology, Dr. Alan Duckman, who is the premier research practitioner in the country. He's someone that should be looked up. He analyzed all the data for the C8 study that everybody's heard about. Dr. Phil Brown at Northeastern. So I reached out to several folks and I said, what's going on? You know, what's happening here? So my concern is that we're still being told we don't really know, and there really isn't anything to show that there's connections with humans. That's absolutely not correct. Absolutely not correct, and I can back that up with a reference sheet if anybody wants that. So the other piece that came to my attention is a mom in town with a 22-month-old and a 4-year-old who are under the care of some certain specialists, contacted me and said that she had been referred by DHHS to this pediatric environmental health unit, which sounds great. You know, Children's Hospital, she thought it was fabulous. Everything went well for several appointments, and then she met this particular physician, and she kind of said things just took a turn. And I didn't say much, believe it or not, at the meeting in Concord on February 15th because I wanted to think and digest, and it wasn't feeling right to me. Something wasn't right there. She kind of verified that same feeling, and she's pretty informed, and her physicians are very informed. So they were very unsettled by this advice. So the advice that was given, and the advice that was given to New Hampshire Medical Providers Association, is that since we don't really know what this does to humans, they do not recommend any additional health monitoring, anything different, any screenings for people in impacted populations, in particular children. The moms from Pease were there, and they are pretty mad, crazy, smart ladies. They are really, really good with this stuff. They had some very specific things in a very impressive way to talk with him. Very, very smooth. I heard from someone yesterday from Hoosick Falls who's been involved in this issue from the beginning, who called in or dialed in or watched or whatever you do to a webinar that was a physician-sponsored, PACE, I think was the group. I'm not even sure what it was. She could see it. This particular doctor was also presenting, concluded the same thing. You know, no reason for this, no reason for that. This woman has worked with the state of New York for 3 years on this issue. She has a research file that would make any professor's eyes glaze over. Definitive things. So what I did at that point is we had an opportunity a couple days ago, some of us in town, to conference in with Dr. Alan Duckman, so I invited some residents to do so, which we did.
Gonna wind up.
Yes, I will. I emailed him the following day, and I said, hey, we're getting this advice here in town, and what do you think is going on? He couldn't really get his head around it. He thinks, well, you must have that wrong. You wouldn't be getting that advice because at minimum you would monitor for this at this age. And I'm familiar with this stuff from his work. So we have to think as a community. I don't know how and who we're going to talk to here. Someone in some sort of leadership has to work and hear some of the things that we're being told, because the guidance seems to be like those original slides that were done in that first meeting that was standing room only at the high school. Those slides were sponsored, clearly marked. You can look them up by 3M. So it's not right.
You've been meeting with DHHS. What are they saying?
They just nodded. I sent a follow-up email. I sent them some data and some information. I didn't get a response from them. We did have a meeting since then with their PR person who said he's going to make us a Merrimack PR page. I don't know what to think about that.
Because
I don't want a page that says...
I don't know anything about it, but they would be the ones to really be the ones spearheading.
Certainly.
Yes.
But the leadership is, from the beginning, this we don't really know. So Dr. Alan Duckman's take on this is, he says there's understandably in some places in the country, not understandably, but there validly is what he called some resistance, and we can guess why. He said there is a pattern in certain areas, not all, where they are picking and choosing the science, and to show a conclusion that it wasn't even valid from 2011 and say this is the last bit of peer-reviewed data. It's appalling. It's just appalling to me. And if anyone at some point wants to contact me and has any ideas of how we can kind of meet, other than just residents, we need some leadership, I think, with us also.
And that's why you've got 2 representatives with your group
to look at this issue.
Discuss it at the meetings.
Who was it that said that there was no need for medical monitoring?
Dr. Alan Wolf in his presentation to the New Hampshire Medical Association.
And what's his affiliation again? He's with the...
I'll give you his brochure. He's with the Boston Children's Hospitals, where he's located, which is phenomenally impressive, and the Environmental Pediatric Health Unit. He's one of the heads there. They are funded by the EPA, and I was
so that's one of those things
very
that
surprised.
You guys could be talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could take that offline, Madam Chair.
Okay. So I just want some of this stuff on record more than anything.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Recognitions, resignations, retirements, none. Okay, appointments. We're going to purposely have Matt Upton come, who is the town attorney, regarding the Merrimack Village District warrant articles. Now, when this was when the warrant articles were first submitted and then was approved for the ballot, the town council wanted to get an opinion from our council as to how this would affect the town council. What are the implications? We decided at that point that if we're going to be getting some feedback and guidance, there's no reason why the public can't hear it at the same time. Okay? So we also, however, have a written, and in fact the audience has been told, there are copies of a recent email received by Matt Upton, which is, I'm sorry, from Matt. Did I say Matt Upton?
You said by Matt Upton.
Oh, from Matt Upton, regarding what he's probably going to tell us verbally now, but it's in writing. So now we are going to allow questions from the audience after the presentation. I am going to stress that it has to be related to the warrant articles only. There's no other, if it's about anything else, I will stop the questioning. Okay, so with that, Matt, go right ahead.
Well, thank you for having me. I think before I talk about the articles themselves, I want to let you know that I spent quite a bit of time looking into these articles. I met with the Secretary of State's office not just once, but twice. I actually met with a legal counsel for the Secretary of State's office this morning. I've also had very lengthy conversations with Attorney Greg Michael, who is the attorney for the MVD. And what I'm about to say, I think we all substantially agree to. Maybe different takes on it, but substantially agree to what I'm about to tell you. I think it's important that everybody understand that towns and village districts are really subdivisions of the state. And as a subdivision of the state, we're restricted as to what we can do. And those restrictions are usually in the form of what we call enabling legislation, which is legislation that's passed that basically gives permission to towns or village districts to do certain things, control how we operate. And if there's not permission specifically existing in legislation, then the presumption is that there is no authority to do whatever it is that's not prescribed by law. And that's where we run into some difficulty with some of these articles. And I'm going to take them in the order of starting with Article 9, which deals with having a town councilor serve as a commissioner on the MVD. I'm not saying that this is a bad idea, but unfortunately, the way the law is written, all councilors for the MVD have to be elected at large. And there's another issue here with this, and that is the statutes that allow or prescribe the composition of the water commissioners allow for either 3 members or 5 members, but not just, you can't just add another member, which is what this warrant article seeks to do. So there's really no way to do or bring about the purpose of the warrant article other than maybe 2 alternative options. So I believe in essence the article is unenforceable, but there are some options. Because I'm not going to just come here to tell the petitioners what they can't do. I think I'd like to give them some ideas on how they might be able to achieve some of their objectives, and that is they certainly can encourage any town councilor to run. I mean, there's no reason why if a town councilor was interested in what's happening at the MVD, they couldn't run. That would give them a member of the town council as a water commissioner. But there is one other way to do this, and it wouldn't give them a voting member, because only voting members have to be elected, is they could amend the bylaws of the MVD to add an ex officio member, which is really not a technical member, and then amend the charter of the town of Merrimack to require the appointment of one councilor who would serve ex officio. That's maybe one of the options to get there, but as the article is presented, it violates state law, or there's not enabling legislation to allow for the appointment of a town councilor, or to limit the election to just the pool of town councilors from one of those seats.
So as written, if it's passed by the town, if we were to vote on it,
If the town wouldn't.
we'll have to go to the MVD. If it passes MVD, oh, we can't, and then nothing will
It,
happen.
it,
I
it's
gotcha.
just, it's unenforceable.
Gotcha, okay. So it stopped there.
But again, if the effort is to try to get members of the town council to have some role and oversight, there are ways that that can happen.
Right.
It's just not
By that way.
by the way that they've proposed. The next article that I want to talk about is Article 11, and this is the article that uses the word dissolve and to ask the MVD to engage in transition planning. As I started off saying, again, we're only allowed to do as subdivisions of the state that which the legislature gives us authority to do. And unfortunately, there's no statutory authority that allows the MVD to engage in transition planning with the town. The only options available to MVD are to establish a village district or to dissolve a village district. There's no ability to engage in kind of a transfer of assets and power to the town. Now, that doesn't mean it can't happen, but that's what would require the town to vote to decide that it wants to acquire the assets and take over the responsibility for managing the village district. So we discussed it at length as to what is the intent behind it, I think, is to actually dissolve MVD, and Attorney Michael agrees with that. And we think that the Secretary of State's office would actually honor that intent. But the intent, and if you look at the rest of the article, it's pretty clear that the dissolution would be contingent upon the town agreeing to accept ownership and responsibility for operating the village district. So this would require a vote of the town, not the village district, vote of the town, to agree to accept responsibility for the operation and maintenance. There's one other issue about this article that really not in the email I shared with you, but I noticed it this afternoon as I was preparing. Nowhere in the article does it talk about the ownership of the assets of MVD. So if MVD is dissolved under the statute, the assets are sold. So there would probably be an extra step that would be required here, and that is for the town to vote to acquire the assets of MVD. That certainly could be handled all at the same time that the town is looking or would be asking for permission to accept operation, management, and control, but it would technically have to also acquire the assets.
Eileen, do you
of
have a
MVD.
question at this point?
Yeah, just for clarity, I
Sure.
just wanted to make sure that you, and I'm pretty sure that you are, but I was kind of confused by it. When you talk about the MVD voting to dissolve, you're talking about the people, the voters
Within the
Right.
village district.
within the, not the board. So,
Correct.
and the same thing with, you said the town needs to vote on whether or not to accept it. That's the town's people,
That's the voters,
not the town council.
not the town council.
Okay.
Correct. If it wasn't clear about that, that's correct. I think this warrant article will obviously be voted on by the voters of the village district. And it's our collective opinion that what that would mean is there would be, if it passes, there would be a dissolution contingent upon the town agreeing to accept responsibility for the management and operation of the village district. And I would add the caveat, the town would also have to vote to acquire the assets of MVD.
Pete?
Matt, so, and just walk me through it, I think I have it, but, so this warrant article passes, warrant article 11. Now it becomes incumbent on the town to hold possibly a special election to determine if we want to accept the MVD, correct?
You could
Except
do
ownership
you
and
could have a
maintenance.
special meeting for that purpose. The warrant article, the way it's structured, requires the handoff, for lack of a better term, to occur before April 15th of 2019. So conceivably, you could do it, you would have to do it by special meeting, because your next annual meeting, the vote wouldn't occur till probably after that deadline.
Correct.
Week before.
Oh, it would be before, the week before, that's right.
Would it be the week before? Okay. So
Because
then you could conceivably you could do it.
session, yeah, in March.
Yeah, so you could conceivably do it at your next annual meeting, 2019.
Okay. And I guess the follow-up to that now is you're saying the town would then have to agree to, the citizens would vote to acquire. Now, when you say acquire, because I heard you say the sell-off of, you mentioned the sell-off of all the property. When you say that, we wouldn't, the townspeople wouldn't have to buy the MVD, correct?
Potentially, yes.
And where would that money go then if you buy the MVD?
You buy, it would go, I would have to think that through. I really haven't thought that far ahead.
Okay, because, I mean, I guess this is where I got a little confused, is, okay, who does the money, are we giving the money, we've bought the MVD now, we're giving the money to the state?
Normally, what would happen is when a corporation dissolves, the assets are sold to satisfy the debts.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the MVD has some debt, I would assume. So that purchase price would probably go to satisfy the debt.
Okay.
Paul,
Thank
do
you.
you know the debt? Speaking of the debt, I had a feeling you did, that's why you. Wonder Boy here, he has all the things that. He called you a geek, did you hear that?
Did you?
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
You had it.
They have bonds outstanding.
Paul, you need to do that, Mike.
Sorry. They have bonds outstanding of about $6.9 million. They have unrestricted net position, fund balance, of about $7.4 million.
So 9 million.
So they have about 6.9 million. So yeah, they got plenty of assets to cover their debt.
Eileen?
Does that also include their fixed assets, or are you talking about their liquid position? So meaning their current assets versus their current debts, because the assets are generally valued on what they cost, not what they are currently worth. Is that correct? I'm just asking you,
Right.
because when we look at our fund balance, we actually, in an enterprise fund, they include their assets, they include their capital assets, like we would include our roads, our bridges, and all that kind of thing. And I'm asking the question, if, are those things included in the fund balance or not?
No, their net investment in capital assets is about $12 million. So that $7 million is on top of that.
So going to the last article, and this is an article that really, it doesn't impact the town of Merrimack specifically, but I was asked to look at it as well. And this is the one where the article seeks to require the commissioners to provide better water quality, for lack of a better term. And this is an article that is really trying to tell the commissioners how to do their job. By law, they're clothed with the authority to operate the MVD, to determine water quality standards to the extent that they exceed state standards. Keep in mind that under paragraph 1 of Article 10, to deliver safe, clean, and drinking water is already mandated by state law. I guess it really depends how you define the term clean. But affordable is probably not mandated by state law. And so these are what we refer to normally as advisory warrant articles, because the commissioners are not mandated to follow them. I would say that the commissioners would be well advised to listen to the people who vote and to honor the their desire to improve the water quality of the district. But can you hold them accountable or mandate them should this article pass? The answer is probably no. And the real remedy here, if they're dissatisfied with the water quality standards, is at the ballot box, and to elect commissioners who are going to be more fastidious about water quality. But again, I would certainly expect that this would send a very strong message to the commissioners that their members are looking for better water quality. But again, it would be advisory in my opinion.
Paul?
Matt, could we go back to the disband article real quick?
The which article?
The other one,
Oh,
disbanding?
the disband article, sure.
I believe some of the language talks about that the MVD, the town council, or their assigns,
Mhm.
the town manager and their assigns. Their assigns is a very open phrase.
Mhm.
So could the town council say, we don't want to take over MVD, but maybe Pennachuck does, and assign the rights to take over MVD to Pennachuck or Manchester Water or another water company, independent water company?
I guess you're right. I didn't really look at it from that standpoint, but it's a fairly vague term. And it's really just asking to develop or engage in a transition plan in the first paragraph. Then in the second paragraph, it really talks about unrestricted access to information. But I guess that you could potentially construe this that if the town of Merrimack wanted to assign their interest to Pennachuck, that there could be a potential requirement to transition plan with Pennachuck. But that's really the long and short of it. I hate to say it's hard to interpret these articles because they don't track the statute. But I believe the courts would try to honor the intent behind the particular article that seeks to disband the MVD. It would probably interpret that. The word dissolution does appear in the article. So I think that they would honor the intent behind it. It would just be subject, again, to the town voting to accept responsibility and I believe, acquire the assets as well. I mean, conceivably, Pennachuck could purchase the assets upon dissolution and then the town. But I think this article really conditions the dissolution itself on the town taking over it. So if Pennachuck were to try to buy the assets, I think that it wouldn't fulfill one of the contingencies of the warrant article.
Eileen?
I guess I would say, because we're talking about a date that's a few days away from next year's election or a few days after next year's election, that all those things must be in place. I'm not saying that it certainly can't be done, but I personally would not know how to go about taking over a water company with their assets, liabilities, and potential lawsuits, et cetera, without some very strong legal advice. And if it passes at MVD, someone needs to help us to anticipate something like that happening at the ballot next year for the council's recommendation first, and then at the ballot box, because there's no way that we can snap our fingers and have that happen 10 days later.
Yeah, normally when these kind of sales or acquisitions occur, there's significant environmental assessments that are undertaken. There might even be the need for what we refer to as a remedial action plan put in place so that we know what we're going to do to deal with any contamination that may exist in the wells. it's a lot of work, a lot of due diligence that would have to be done prior to anybody giving an opinion to the town that would suggest that that would be a good idea. So one of the things the petitioners certainly should consider is when they go to their meeting later this month, maybe consider amending that warrant article to push that date out another year at least, so that if, at least that makes it possible for the town to look into it. I'm not sure how the council feels about that, whether you want to spend the money that would be necessary to even start the process of evaluating it. But I agree. I think it's going to be very difficult to try to do all the steps that would need to be taken prior to a vote in April of 19.
Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Matt, could you tell us, just on the other side of the coin, should this pass the MBD, Article 11, and then fail at a town vote? What happens?
MVD would just continue to operate as if nothing happened.
Okay.
Because again, we all view this as being contingent. The dissolution is contingent upon the town agreeing to take over it.
And the state agrees with that opinion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and in your letter, you said the Secretary of State would go with the intent, or
We
as
think-
they
we believe
understand
so.
the intent of the article.
Like any state agency, they're really not in the business of interpreting local warrant articles. They really deal more with elections. So they were very glad to talk to me about the commissioner's article, a little more hesitant to really talk about the dissolution article. But I believe, talking with Dave Scanlon, that probably would be their interpretation.
That's sort of the way I read it as well, because I've seen many times where the courts have not gone the way I would have interpreted the words in the law, but had gone with what they interpreted the intent of the parties involved to be. We've seen that a lot of times here in Merrimack and as well around Nashua and stuff like that.
You know, in fairness, most voters aren't lawyers. They don't necessarily understand all the statutory restrictions that exist out there. They're just trying to do what they think is best. And the courts really support and recognize that, and they'll try to reach deep to support voter intent. And keep in mind that every voter that's looking at this has got a different idea and probably what it means at some level. So that's why courts are a little bit more flexible when they're interpreting voter intent.
Okay, thanks. And I guess I was going to ask a question about the date, whether that was too soon or not. You're suggesting up to a year later. I would think we need some time later that would be advisable.
I mean, I think this is a very compelling set of circumstances we're in right now. So normally something like this could take 3 to 5 years. I think when Nashua tried to acquire Pennachuck, I think they were involved in that for several years.
But it was a slightly different situation
It
where
was.
it was a not
It was.
friendly option,
was,
and
correct.
this resolution would insist upon it being a friendly
Correct.
effort.
Correct. But it's really more about making sure that everybody understands what the ramifications are. And that's what takes time, is just gathering the information. And much of that information may be available right now because of the extensive testing has already been undertaken. But without seeing those documents and understanding the depth of the inquiry, I'm not sure that a year is going to be sufficient.
Other questions? Yes, Eileen?
Paul just whispered in my ear, and I totally agree. And I'm not saying this to be to let sway the opinion, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this investigation will cost. Not only would it take time, but it'll cost a lot of money.
Absolutely.
To make sure that the town takes over the entity properly. We'd also have to take over their staff, their payroll, their as I said, all their assets and liabilities, and inventory, and then
You'd have to you'd have to hire a forensic auditor to audit all their books and understand where they are. You would have to hire environmental engineers to kind of synthesize all the information that's out there.
And all I'm just saying is that if we're going to do it, we need to do it properly,
Correct.
so that the town government and the townspeople who vote are on the town's budget, et cetera, are protected from a bad investment. Exactly.
So the MVD voting day is March 27th. That's a Tuesday, right? So it's after that vote, and depending upon the results, would we then have to start assimilating information, right? And the information that we would need to get. Finley?
Well, I'm not sure what we absolutely have to do, but I think that if the vote is in the affirmative at the MVD meeting,
Correct.
then at our next meeting, next April 9th, that will likely be on the ballot, asking if the town wants to take it over. And then if they did, that's when I think money would necessarily be spent after that. I don't think doing it beforehand, not knowing what the townspeople would desire, I don't know that that would be a great idea.
Well, I was only thinking in terms of not investing in major money, but in order to educate the public as to the ramifications of the vote, you'd have to be able to acquire information and talk about the pros and cons of one vote one way or the other, present that information, and then the public would vote in April. So there'd have to be a certain amount of investment, just being able to educate.
Sure.
That's what I was referring
No,
to.
and I agree with that, yes.
Okay. Not in terms of
Yep.
the major investment that Eileen
Yeah.
was talking
No.
about. Eileen and then Tom? Tom, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to clarify, because when you said, Finley, the vote on March 27th and then a vote on April 9th, you're talking about a whole year later.
Yes.
And theoretically not doing anything expense-wise on the whole process until that year
Sure.
plus a couple of weeks date comes around.
I believe,
And
yes.
I would think we'd have a hard time doing that, specifically since the way it's worded. It talks about, working on a transition plan. I agree we shouldn't spend tons of money. We can't go out and hire attorneys and all that kind of stuff, but we certainly would end up, I think we would be compelled to at least work with them and talk to them and understand what's going on, in which case we probably should have something relatively soon on our agenda to move forward with that, or decide if we're going to move forward with it.
After the vote.
But I agree, we're not spending $1 million without approval from the town to do
Yep.
so, and we don't have it in our budget to do that at this point
Right,
either,
which is why I
so.
thought Matt had suggested that they might amend
That'd
it
be the
at the
best.
27th meeting, and it would make that
To give it more time.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. I
Right.
was thinking it to myself.
No, but that
Sorry.
makes, I agree with that concept.
Yeah.
Eileen?
I would just say that my advice to you is, and because of my own comfort level, and I'm sure the rest of the staff, and it should be for you as well, that we shouldn't just have generalized information for when the people vote on it. We need to have factual, specific data before, which would cost a lot of money. So,
So might a warrant article, if it is in fact proposed on the next year's ballot, should it be given authorization to spend that money to do that digging? Because I can imagine that it will cost a lot of money to put those things together and have a solid, reason to go forward to the town to say it's okay if we buy this. So I don't know. I don't know how it might go.
The bottom line
I
is-
think you would actually have to have probably the funding lined up. So you're talking about probably a warrant article to bond the acquisition of the MVD. I mean, these numbers are pretty significant when you're looking at them. I'd have to look into furthermore how the title to those properties are held.
So you're
whether-
talking about spending some money?
I mean, it's a lot of work to try to unravel these situations and determine, what needs to be done. So I would, probably recommend that if the petitioners are listening, to think about amending that date and for another year, at least that makes it possible for the town to consider it, and I'm not, again, it's a difficult discussion, difficult decision.
So we wait. Again, this is all presumptive,
Yeah.
Right.
so we have to wait. Okay, any other questions from the council? Okay, I'll open it to the public. Again, if there's any questions that any of the public wants to ask our attorney, up to 3 minutes, and make sure it's only on the articles.
I've numbered them, so.
And again, that's his opinion, so.
Oh, yeah, no.
We have to
Actually,
remember
no,
that.
thank you for being here. You've clarified a few things. I'm with the group that submitted the articles. In particular to Article number 10, you question the definition of clean water. Can the town council set a limit for PFOAs in the water, independent of the state?
That's a complicated question because in the state we have this doctrine, it's called the doctrine of preemption. And any time the state has what they call a comprehensive legislative scheme, local government is preempted from trying to occupy that same territory. But in certain cases, they've allowed towns to be more restrictive. In other words, so if there were a state standard and we wanted to be more strict about that standard, that often does not violate the doctrine of preemption. But I'd have to look into it to really
Please do.
give you better ideas about that.
Eileen?
Again, I just want to make sure that we're very clear that the town council at this point in time cannot determine the PFOA limit in the water because they do not own the water company.
See, and that's the problem. We keep going round and round and round. And that gets to my second point, which is Article 11. Can somebody please define the relationship for me between MVD and town council? Who's the alpha dog? Are they completely separate?
Why don't you talk about that?
They're completely separate legal corporations.
Right.
Well, and so this is what's happening with this situation. We're not getting any handshakes. And that's I mean, from what you've explained and you've said it was a strong message, and thank you for saying that, because really we just want to be heard. We want action. We want clean water in the town. We want to be the squeaky wheel. And believe it or not, we don't want to create chaos. That's not our intent. All we want is clean water for the town, but it seems like we're in an impossible situation because one corporation is not working with the other corporation.
I would say not working would be an inaccurate way to describe it.
How would you describe it?
We're in two different rooms. We're not allowed to buy at the same room at the same time. We're restricted, and so are they.
I'm sorry?
It's not as if we're not trying to cooperate and care about what happens to each other, which I personally accepted that is what you're saying. I don't concur with that. But I think there is no ability, even if we wanted to be able to tell MVD what to do and vice versa.
But you see,
Is that accurate,
That's
Matt?
correct.
But I think that's what needs to change. Because
Well, that's a
they're
whole
in charge.
different issue.
I know, but that's kind of what we were trying to get at with these warrant articles.
I understand.
To get cooperation, to get the town as well as the water, which is part of the town, to get everybody working together to solve this problem. So,
There's nothing
Go
that
ahead.
would.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There's nothing that would prohibit that. Well, I know this is a very complicated issue, and I know MVD is working through legal channels to try to resolve it. And I hope you get to a place where you're comfortable with what they're doing. But I think really if you want to make an impact, it's really to try to find, if you don't feel like the commissioners are adequately representing your concerns, is to go to the ballot box and address it. Get candidates to run.
And this is another sort of, I guess, legal question. I guess you're the
And
person.
I should say, I'm not casting any aspersions against the commissioners.
Right.
I'm
No,
just
yeah.
saying that's a potential remedy.
Right, so wait until the next election. Is there a way to impeach? I know it's very topical.
Okay, that's beyond the articles. I want to pull
Okay, I'll look into that.
restricting to the articles.
Okay, I'm all set. Thank you.
Tom has a question. Come on up. You can come on up.
Just real quick, I wanted to verify, I believe that the voters at the village district is equal to the voter list of the town of Merrimack. But seeing Brian McCarthy in the audience, I was hoping maybe he could verify for me that they're identical lists. There's not a different list. So any voter of the town of Merrimack can vote in the MVD.
Right.
I really have no.
I'm just making that statement and acknowledged by the moderator from the MVD. Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Wolfram von Schön for Conservation Drive. We talked about budgeting the things that may or may not need to be, invested into this transition, if there were to be one. I also hear numbers in the multi-million-dollar range of bonds, but also of assets that are out there. And my understanding, if I heard that right earlier, is the assets exceed the liabilities, correct? So what would we need to budget? Would we need to budget the legal consulting, the environmental and chemical and whatnot surveying? Would we need to finance possibly the whole total of assets because they temporarily need to be financed as part of the transition, but then later those assets would then obviously cover the debts, and there would be a smaller amount remaining that would then transition into the property, the township's ownership. So what kind of budget are we looking at?
And I really can't tell you without looking deeper into
Not all
the-
amounts. Definition of, I'm sorry to interrupt, but are we looking at the total of these assets and liabilities to be temporarily financed by the town of Merrimack as part of this transition, or are we only looking at the bottom line of all of that and the effort invested to assess and execute that transition?
Certainly, in order for the town to make the initial decision about whether it wanted to acquire the assets, you would have a fair amount of expense associated with doing environmental due diligence as well as looking at the assets and liabilities of the corporation. I don't know enough about their balance sheets, and I'm not really qualified to give you an opinion about what kind of money that would involve for the acquisition.
Yeah, that's not the question. I'm sorry.
But I think you're asking me to give you an assessment about what kind of money we would have to budget.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, then I
No.
misunderstood.
Now, what I'm asking is, again, there is a certain amount of debts,
Mm-hmm.
liabilities, and there's a certain amount of assets.
Mhm.
If we subtract the two from each other, there's a certain bottom line value that the MVD represents today, which is the one minus the other, correct?
All I know is what the figures are that Mr. McCallie shared with us,
Well,
but I'm not
that's
sure
a
that
given for
those.
any entity. I mean, that's a
Well,
given for a
But
corporation.
I'm not certain, you're asking me to give you a very specific answer with very ballpark numbers.
No,
and I just
I'm not
can't do
asking
that.
for, no.
Okay.
We're still not understanding each other. There's expenses that will be incurred for surveying, for legal counsel, for forensic and, accounting and all of that. No questions there. Obviously, that's a budget or the town of Merrimack would need to consider. But there's a monetary value that the MVD represents, which is the total of the assets minus the liabilities, correct?
Correct.
So, as part of this transition, would the town of Merrimack need to budget for the assets, the value of the assets, or just whatever is the difference between assets and liabilities?
Whatever the fair market value of the assets are, subject to whatever encumbrances exist.
Does Eileen, either one of you have any idea? Help Matt out.
So I guess what I would say is, again, I'm no expert, and that's why we would have to spend the money to, gather all that information about how you would even, what experts you would need to have the townspeople be knowledgeable enough about that to vote on, which is what you're talking about,
Right.
like a step one.
Right,
Okay?
that's not the
But
question.
that's not your question.
That's obviously something we need to
Right,
budget for,
right,
no doubt
okay.
about that.
So the question that you're asking is, how does a town or any other entity acquire someone like MVD? Is it based on their balance sheet? What is it based on? And we may not know the answer to that tonight, but you can ask Matt.
It's going to be based on the fair market value of the entity, of the assets. And that will take into consideration if there's any debt associated with the asset. The asset can be devalued if there's contamination associated with it. The functional value, the life of the wells,
Any outstanding lawsuits?
Right.
yeah, future costs for
It's true.
for reviving the wells or
Right. But we also had said earlier that, at the end, there is, based on the numbers we saw, a certain dollar amount standing, in the room that the MVD, as the MVD is being disbanded, would not own at that point anymore because it doesn't exist anymore. So there's money on the table that,
that's the part that this is the part where I might have a problem answering that question because I don't know that. I don't know how they value their assets. I don't know whether they've taken into consideration some of these issues that might affect the overall value of the enterprise. So until I can really look at those numbers and those figures and understand how they're derived, I can't tell you that there's a positive value there. I can tell you based on the balance sheet, it sounds like there is, but I can't tell you that that's for certain or that the town would have to pay that amount to acquire it.
it just sounds as if if the town would have to put all the money on the table for the entity of MVD, which would then dissolve and disappear as far as a legal entity, and there may or may not be money on the table. Would that be considered then part of the deal back to the town? If there were any that would, effectively reduce the impact on the community, or not?
Might I interject?
I guess
This is exactly the kind of conversation that has to occur after a vote would occur. Because all those specifics that you're legitimately bringing up, it really doesn't have to do with the article per se, but it has implications
Right.
as a result of whatever the decision's made.
I guess the reason why I'm bringing it up, because the statement has been made multiple times, there's a lot of money that the community needs to budget for. As long as we're talking about the expense to assess
Okay?
and acquire, actually,
Gotcha.
as long as we talk about the expense to assess, I think that's clear. But if we're putting this monster out there,
Yeah, we just
we
don't
also
know.
have to talk about what are we getting for that monster.
Right, I
Right.
got you.
Okay.
I got you.
Thank you.
Finley?
I'm just wondering, so I understand, do they have a liquid cash in excess of their,
Eileen?
I don't think we have the proper information
Okay.
to assess that at this
Right.
point by a balance sheet. As Matt has indicated, we're just taking numbers off of the front sheet of a balance sheet with no, I'm sure these are audited, but I don't know, because I haven't seen them. So I think it's premature to even be giving any numbers out like that, and implying that there's $7 or $8 million out there for either the town to pay to the MVD or pay to somebody. I don't know, but it's all part of the investigation. And I know when a number gets thrown out there, like 7 point whatever million dollars, that it sticks in people's minds. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is just a statement that was made that's not necessarily the whole story.
Right.
So please don't take that number to the bank.
Okay. Please go right ahead.
Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm Don Provencher. I'm actually one of the candidates for the MVD commissioner. But I'm not clear if the town needs to raise money to purchase the assets. Where's that money going to? I don't know who's receiving that money.
It's a good question, and really that's beyond the scope of what I've really been asked to look at in these warrant articles. So I'd rather defer on that question for now.
I mean, it seems if the numbers are true, and I understand there's a due diligence cost to this, but beyond that, if the MVD is in a net positive, cash flow exceeds the expenses and debt, doesn't seem like there's a cost to the town. Not
Well,
sure about that.
I think we have to separate two different things. One is being able to investigate and get the information on how to do it, the process of it,
Right.
rather than just the MVD itself. It's two different things, if I'm understanding correctly. And it's the, what do we have to do in preparation of and in the process of transition that's going to cost the money, not the actual assets and stuff. Am I understanding it?
That would be part of the due diligence as to how to go about this. And what I would say is normally if we took over a utility, such as, let's say we didn't own the sewer department, and we wanted to take it over, the townspeople or whoever wanted to take it over, there would normally be different constituencies. So the water users, only the water users would be, you'd have to transfer the assets over. We have to make sure that you're representing your both constituencies. But in this case, they appear to be the same constituencies, so that's where the problem lies. And it's just a matter of, so for instance now, we actually have two separate funds, the general fund. We have several funds, but the general fund where the tax rate is derived, and the sewer fund where the sewer rates are derived. So they're two constituencies. So when we do the payroll for the sewer fund, for instance, they have to pay the town for so that the sewer users are paying their fair share of that rather than the townspeople.
So it would be kind of similar, you have a sewer bill for the people who have sewer, you'd sort of have the
It would be set up as a
breakout
separate-
of the water bill part on the
Sounds right.
yeah.
So how you would do that?
So that's why it becomes confusing, because if the entity is actually supposedly the same entity or the same voters, I'm not sure how that all happens. And I actually...
Because some of those voters have private wells and they're not actually served by,
Right.
other than a hydrant.
Yes. Yep.
It's
Right.
a very interesting issue, that what if there's a value over and above the debt, the town's acquiring it, paying it to MVD, that's dissolving, which is going to have to disgorge the money. It doesn't seem to be, but there have not been a lot of these in the history of the
Right.
state.
It would
I'd
seem
have
that
to look into it.
the owners of MVD, I guess, are the ratepayers,
Or the voters.
the voters, yeah. There was also, you mentioned about, costs of future improvements, well upgrades and, things in the future. I believe, I'm not sure, I'm going to find out soon maybe if I'm voted in, but a lot of that money is set aside in capital reserve accounts too at the MVD. So while they're considered as liabilities, they do have funding that supports them. So it's not really a true liability.
See, it's very, we just don't know.
Right.
Conjecturing, right. But
I
you're
would al-
identifying the complexity of it all.
It is complex. If this does pass, I would also like to hopefully stress that it'd be, in my opinion, be better if you had a special election to get this thing moving faster instead of waiting a year.
We'd have to
if
get
it's
permission
possible.
from the Secretary of State to
Oh,
have a
it's-
special.
okay.
It doesn't mean we couldn't do it,
All right.
but we'd have to get permission to do it.
Okay, I didn't know that. Be good to look
Would it-
into.
Just as a matter of point, we'd have to get permission from the Superior Court.
Oh, Superior Court.
Superior Court.
Okay.
It'll make it easy.
To do it, but
One of those, please, one of those.
and there has to
From
be
the state.
There has to be what they define under the law as an emergency to hold a special town meeting. Under these circumstances, it might fulfill the requirements of the statute.
Yeah. And the only last thing I wanted to say, I know we've talked about, through the Penachuk name out there, and from what I believe they're a for-profit company that pays
Yes.
their, I would
Dividends.
prefer to keep it in either the town's interest or MVD because it's basically a nonprofit. You don't have, presidents and whatever making hundreds of thousands of dollars of salary. So
Agreed.
I don't think that would be an option I would think would be a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Any others?
Dennis Odess, 9 Forsythia Lane in Merrimack. Just a couple of questions. One is, if you take over Merrimack Village District, the town now becomes a public utility, does it not, or a private utility, which now you come under the auspices of the PUC.
That's correct.
So,
No,
I don't think we have to.
On rates?
No, we would
Right.
not. We would not have to go to PUC. It would be done through the DRA, just like wastewater. We would not be on the NDES.
okay.
It would not.
The other thing is, if it becomes a town department, like the highway department, the waterworks, the police, the fire, every other department in the town fights for the same money every year, correct? No?
Well, there are different kinds of funds. So as I was saying, you have the general fund, which are the police, the fire, the public works, everything you think of as it relates to the town. The utility, which is the wastewater fund, only comes from, it doesn't necessarily fight for money because the exact amount that comes from the ratepayers pays for the
So
expenses
if they have to,
of the
if they have to
sewer.
replace a pump station, they don't have to go to the town and say, I need,
It's
They
not
do-
supported by taxes. It's
Okay.
supported by
Right, but
fees.
they would have to come to the town.
Right.
Because but what I'm saying is, from an accounting perspective, which you're
Mm-hmm.
probably not interested in, it has nothing to do with the property taxes.
so it's kind of a self-funded entity,
Exactly.
basically.
So, yeah, so it's
Exactly
not
right.
like police and fire, but it would be like the sewer fund that we have.
Correct.
All right,
Yeah.
the last one, I do agree with the other gentleman as far as Pennachuck. I have a brother-in-law that has Pennachuck Water, and what you pay
That's
for
right.
6 months, they pay a month.
That's right.
So there's a big difference in what you pay for water here.
Big time.
I just have another question about, MVD serves the village, not just the town. So what about those customers? Do they have no say in this, or, because MVD serves water to more than just the town of Merrimack. It's Bedford also, isn't it? And, do they have any say in this?
It depends on whether they're actually part of the district or whether they're selling water under a private purchase
that's right,
agreement.
too.
And I don't know the answer to that question.
That's right, too.
Brian could probably tell us.
That's right. There are some,
They're not allowed to vote at the MVD meeting, so they're
They're
probably.
not allowed to vote, okay.
No, they're customers.
Is it the town of
MVD.
Bedford who pays? buys the
There's a
water?
meter, from what I understand, there's a meter right at the town line that Pennachuck owns the rights in Bedford.
Okay.
So Pennachuck buys the water
From us.
From
Oh, I see.
MVD
Okay. All
and
right.
sells it to them.
gotcha.
Okay, nope, thanks. That's-
I knew there was something about that, but I knew. Okay, we're all set. Okay, thank you. Again, the MVD voting is Tuesday, March 27th. And is it at, where is it at? Is it JMU's? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate
Thanks,
your
Matt.
time. Oh, look at this. He's jumping right in here. Annual review with the Highway Safety Committee per Town of Merrimack Charter, Section 6-6. At least annually, there should be an annual review with the Highway Safety Committee. This agenda item is to highlight the committee's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns that council should know or act on. And we have Captain Dudash.
Good evening, Lady Chair, gentlemen of the board, Eileen Cavanaugh, and
Oh, yeah.
Paul McCallie.
We're going to take Matt Upton's sign away from you, unless you want to change your identity.
Okay. I was asked
Go
by
right ahead.
Chief Roy, who couldn't be here tonight, to step in and fill in and give you the annual review on the Highway Safety Committee. First of all, I think it's very important for the people in the audience and also the people watching TV to know what the Highway Safety Committee is. But basically, the purpose of the committee is a program that we have designed to reduce motor vehicle accidents in the town. which includes reducing serious, bodily injury, property injuries, damage, and also injury. And this is done through a mission which includes investigating, educating, giving advice, giving suggestions, taking concerns from the public and from our citizens, and also passing on suggestions to the town council when needed. During the past year, the last time that there was a meeting was May 10th, and that was with Chief Doyle. And as you know, Chief Doyle has retired and Chief Roy has taken over. So since that point, the meetings have been kind of slow, only been one meeting, but I do want to mention who's on the board. And right now the chairman is Chief Roy, Paul Canaza, Glenn Wallace, they're both town residents, Mike Currier from the Merrimack Fire Rescue, Tom Tumalona from the Public Works Department, Bob and Fran LaRue, also town residents, William Godfrey, Tim Thompson from the town, Tom Tuso from the school district, and also Finley Rothaus, the town council representative.
Who volunteers every year.
As I mentioned, I'm filling in for the chief. I did look at the minutes for the past year to see what happened. Basically, there was 4 things that were looked at by the highway department. From the highway safety committee. One was a complaint made from a resident from Glenwood Drive, which, if you know where Glenwood Drive is, it's basically at the fork near Turkey Road and the Lake Road. Basically, her concern was that when you take Glenwood Drive and you take a quick shortcut to Joppa Road, that there should be a traffic light, or I should say a street light in the middle of the neighborhood. I believe the committee looked at that. They felt that it did not fit the criteria, which is lights are really at the intersections, major intersections, such as maybe Joppa and Glenwood, but not at the middle of the neighborhood. A second concern that was brought up to the committee was also a lady from the Wildcat Falls area. She had a concern about maybe for the town to erect a stop sign on West Chamberlain Road, pretty much near Rutherford Street. The committee looked at that also, and they felt that it didn't fit the criteria for a stop sign, although we understood the concern of the citizen that it's a blind corner. I believe the committee also asked the Public Works to look at maybe put in a double yellow line, but again, that came back that it didn't fit the criteria for a line to be put in that area.
Okay.
One of the third things that were looked at during the year was basically more of an issue for the planning board, and that was for the school transportation department, the school bus company that was moving from the south end of downtown down to right behind the old
vaults.
right behind Silos and everything. So there was some concerns from some citizens stating that, hey, it's going to cause some backup, could cause some blind corners, and people can be involved in car accidents. These people who came to the meeting, these citizens, I believe there was 2 or 3 of them, were basically told by the committee that good concerns. They wrote them down, and a letter was penned by Chief Doyle at the time to the planning board of our concerns. And I believe at that point in the past year, I believe that the planning board has gone forward and has approved that plan.
Yes, it has.
The fourth thing that we looked into, which is still going on since since really 2013, is Exit 13. And I know Finley's probably familiar with that. He's been involved with that. But that's basically the berm as you come off the Everett Turnpike, both north and southbound as the 2 merge.
Right.
There's that that section. But basically, I think we've gotten to a point that it's just, we keep asking the state for help. Basically, the answer is saying that they've done as much as they can. Although I can represent to this board today that I did meet with the state probably about a month and a half ago. They're still listening, but there's not really been a lot of action. Although I believe they did put a sign up coming from Litchfield just to give some people some advisory and some direction into Merrimack. But I know the big push is to maybe get some type of, maybe some rubble strips. So if you're coming off the turnpike northbound, at least to warn the traffic as they come to the merge. But again, I think it's been going on since 2013. Not sure how far it's going to get.
To be continued. Yes, Finley?
Actually, I don't know if I didn't make the meeting. Representative LaRue met with people from the state up there at the site about a month ago, and I ran into him at the gas pumps a couple days ago, and he said that the state said there's nothing they're going to do. Okay. It's a terrible intersection, and I just can't imagine that anybody can't see that. It's tough. So that's the last he told me was nothing's going to happen.
And I agree with it. It's tough because I think we all use it, and I think we all agree that we all got to turn our heads, and that one of these days there could be a car accident there. But we've pushed the issue, and it's just not going anywhere.
So that's
Well-
slightly contradictory to the information that was communicated to me that the DOT was contemplating putting signage at that particular area to get people to slow down going into that intersection, and that they were still kind of perseverating over the concept of putting signs there. But as far as scaling back the berm or rumble strips, Finley's correct that they weren't enthralled about that. But signage is still on the
Possibility.
table, from what I was
The yield
told.
sign on the northbound traffic would work, otherwise nothing else. I mean, the yield, to changing lanes doesn't do anything. If you're northbound getting off, both, you own both lanes, north and south.
And I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
So those are the 4 things that were addressed by the Highway Safety Committee. Chief Roy? Yes?
Yes, Pete?
Okay,
right
you can finish, Captain.
Okay. Those are the 4 things that were addressed during the past year. Chief Roy has acknowledged, and we've talked about in the last couple of days, because of the transition from Chief Doyle, it's important for her to set the next appointment probably sometime after April 10th when she comes back from vacation, and readdress a couple of the concerns of the residents just to make sure they were addressed properly. And that's, the Rutherford Street area and also Glenwood Drive, just to double check and make sure we did those correctly.
Okay. Peter?
Okay, Captain, just a couple of things, and I know you're here representing the chief, and Councilor Rothaus is here, but over the years, continue to ask the questions. I've asked it of Director Fox, is the intersection of Turkey Hill and Babusick Lake, Wire and Route 3, and Pearson and Bedford Road. These are these angled, almost fork-like intersections, and I think that they are a hazard, and I think it's agreed upon, and I'd like to see if there's any update on what's going to happen with these, any reconfiguration or anything, if there's been discussion of it. And
Actually, it's up, that's the plan as time goes on, when work is going to be accomplished at these sites, they're going to 90-degree the turn, Turkey Hill 90-degree into
That's right.
Babusick Lake
It's in the
Road.
works.
So it's just timing, I think, now for all 3 of those.
Paul and then Bill?
I believe 2 of the 3. I know Wire for sure, and I know Turkey Hill. Both of those are in the capital improvement plans. I believe one's coming up 1920, and one's coming up, I believe, 2021. So they're both in the works. The Wire Road one has been delayed because of the Route 3 bridge, and Turkey Hill got moved up because of that. So they are looking at possible solutions, teeing it off, putting in a roundabout in the Turkey Hill. The other one, I don't believe it's on the CIP as of yet, but we can check into that further.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you, Paul. Also, the school bus office, and I know this came up months ago when we first discussed in front of the council, and is the police department going to put together some type of plan when the school bus, this office opens on William Street, to monitor, to have somebody out there to start to see how it operates and deals with traffic, to see if there's an issue?
As far as I know, there was no plan, but since you mentioned, I think it's a good idea. Knowing that the school starts early, 6 o'clock, and I'm sure that's a good, task and job for the midnight shift to see how things happen, and I think it'd be important for us to watch to see how the buses exit, because we know there are quite a bit of buses. As you see them exit the schools, you can see sometimes 15, 20 buses at a time, so I think it's going to be important for the police department to see how they exit onto Route 3.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's a good idea.
And my last question, and I'm done, is just, is the Highway Safety Committee involved in what's going on with Executive Park Drive and Amherst Road, that intersection? And
That's the state.
Yeah, that's more of the state, but I will mention that when I had that meeting about a month and a half ago with the state on exit 13, we did bring up that intersection. Actually, when I met with the gentleman, I actually had his card, I think it was Mr. Cass. We talked quite a bit about that intersection. We did talk about the importance of a study to be done to look at what impact it's going to happen when you're talking about 250, 275 apartments.
Right.
So we're talking about timing because it is their lights.
And I think it's important, and thank you, Captain, but I think it's important that, granted, it is the state's intersection, and that's understood by myself, but we, as the Highway Safety Committee, speaks up to mention our concerns for it.
I will, and everything that you mentioned prior to this about the T intersections, I'll write them down for notes, and again, I'll pass it on to Chief Roy for the meeting for just after April 10th, so we can come back. We also talked about today that we have a second meeting sometime in the fall to talk about what's been accomplished, so we can talk about this again.
Fantastic, thank you.
And Tom just wants to address it, then Bill?
Can I follow up on that? The planning board approved those apartments back there, and they did it after an extensive discussion with the developer who's planning to put in a peer-to-peer signaling system with the assistance and cooperation of the state. In fact, the state is very interested in seeing how this particular system functions. It's in operation around the country. There's a couple of them in Massachusetts, none of them in New Hampshire. But the state DOT has asked specifically of the developer to go ahead and install this because they believe it will in fact help this intersection and others in the state. All of the reviews done by traffic engineers have said that this peer-to-peer system will in fact improve the situation even with the 275 or however many apartments go in out there. And so it did come through very clearly by peer review and review of the different traffic engineers that this new system, which has a Bluetooth, for lack of a better description, ability for the main intersection signal to tell the intersection at Executive Park that it's got traffic coming. And the two of them can work in conjunction with the 4 or other, traffic lights around there to make sure they keep that intersection clear and avoid having people parked in the center of the intersection and things of that nature. So I look forward to that being implemented, and it is in fact on the books, and the state is backing it.
And I've been following it, and thank you, Tom, for that. And I've been following it, but I always think, too, with the Highway Safety Committee, maybe it's just somebody kind of also mentioning, hey, we're still concerned about this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I do want to mention, Council, that I actually was assigned by the chief to express our concerns of the development from the police line, not just for the highway safety, and it included areas that not just for the traffic, but also the walking public, people on bicycles. So there are a lot of concerns were passed on to the planning board.
Bill, I'm sorry.
There was a letter dated September 23rd from the Department of Transportation to Chief Roy. That was submitted, copied to Eileen. Eileen sent it to us. Check your emails. Should be the 26th or the 27th that the DOT has agreed to configure the lighting system at Executive Park Drive with the rest of that interchange at Greeley Street and Continental Boulevard. They've agreed to it.
Okay.
Huge.
Yeah.
How long have we been waiting for that, Councilor Koenig?
Awfully long time.
Awfully long time.
Since a new light was put into exit 11.
Correct.
It's been years.
Correct. So
since Continental was put in there, probably.
So I do want to thank Representative LaRue and Chief Roy and Finley for what they've done to push that particular issue. I think it's finally safe to say that our long local nightmare of the light at Executive Drive is coming to an end.
Well, let's not be
We hope.
presumptive here.
We hope.
We hope.
Knock on wood.
Quick question. Yes, Tom.
So just real quick, Captain. So I'm a citizen. I want to contact the Highway Safety Committee. How do I do that?
Perfect.
How do you do that? First, I would recommend contact the chairman, and that would be the Chief Roy.
Okay, so just contact the chief at the
Right,
PD.
and at the point she would communicate with you, either through in person,
Okay.
on the phone, or through email.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yes, Tom.
Yeah, just one other question. Recently, we took down the restrictive signs on Woodbury Drive and DW Highway. I was wondering if you had any comments on how that intersection is behaving. And
I think everything has been, from what I can see, working very, very well. And a couple of people expressed their concerns at the beginning that we made a mistake, but I have not seen that.
I've used it ever since.
The funny story
I
is
used it as well. I just wanted to.
Funny story. About a week or two after that went into effect, I was pulling in to talk to Mr. McCallie, and Mark Rivet from Rivet's Funeral Home came up to me and thought he bagged me for taking a illegal left turn, and I informed him that we just changed the sign. So he walked away with his head down.
He thought he begged you.
But no, it's working well. We watched it closely, and I don't see any issues at all.
And really,
Thanks.
there's plenty of sight in order to know when you can turn or not. There's no blind spots there, so.
Right. And again, a lot of those changes were made because of business people, like Billy Silvio owns Silva's Auto. He was getting sick of people cutting through his lot. So I've spoken to him because he's a friend. He's very happy that we opened up the roads.
Christ.
Okay,
Nice.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Captain.
Legislative update from state reps. I don't think we have any here. Town manager's report.
You missed
you doing the milfoil?
Oh, I'm sorry. Boy,
You're in a hurry.
milfoil. Sorry about that. Wow.
Did you see, they started to panic.
Sorry. If you knew me, you'd know not to panic. Public hearing 2018 milfoil grant funds for Horseshoe and Natticook Lake. Town Council will hold a public hearing to authorize the acceptance and expenditure of up to $9,587 of a grant from New Hampshire DES for milfoil control via diver-assisted suction harvesting, known as DASH, and herbicide treatment, in addition to the town's matching share of $28,761,000 this fiscal year for DASH and herbicide for variable milfoil control efforts in portion of Horseshoe Pond and Natticook Lake, pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. Welcome, and Robert Price, right?
Yes.
Okay, who's the Planning and Zoning Administrator, and you can introduce your partner in crime.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the council. My name is Robert Price. I'm the Planning and Zoning Administrator for the town. With me tonight is Kelly Shamel. She's the Assistant Planner. We are here tonight just to go through the annual acceptance and authorization for the expenditure of a grant from DES, in addition to authorizing the town's matching share for milfoil control in both Horseshoe Pond and Natticook Lake. As you probably know, the town's been managing milfoil on both those water bodies annually since 2012. Last year, Horseshoe Pond required a pond-wide herbicidal treatment, which brought about positive results. But that said, DES recommends that a second herbicidal treatment be done this coming year, because they say that 2 consecutive years is really what's necessary to fully target the plant. And that it would be followed up by a hand removal and or the diver-assisted suction harvesting or DASH treatment as needed. Natticook Lake has been responding very well each year to just DASH treatment by itself. There's a very active group there that monitors, and the same course of treatment is recommended there again this year. Contractors this year, DES has selected Solitude Lake Management for the herbicide treatment, and at Horseshoe Pond, and Aqualogic for the DASH management at both water bodies, and their bid proposals are in your packets. In terms of the grant awarded this year is at a 25% matching level, which is down from 30% last year. This is due to an increasing number of applicants as well as rising treatment costs. So therefore, Merrimack has been awarded $9,587, which places the town's share at $28,761 to be expended from the Milfoil Capital Reserve Fund. So the total cost for treatment this year is $38,348.
Excellent. Okay, discussion at all. Yes, Peter.
Thank you for the update. I'm just curious. Do you, and I don't know, I understand what milfoil is and stuff and how it works, but do you guys ever see an end in sight on the treatment of this? And but is this going to be an ongoing process?
From what I understand in hearing from DES previously, it really would be an ongoing type of process because it is an invasive species and it adapts very well. So it's just something you just got to keep up with.
Thank you.
In previous, every year we have people come in, and you're right, the people in Natticook, they have a very active association where they help DES tag the milfoil so that they don't have to do the herbicide because they catch it early enough that they literally just use the divers to go in.
Right.
So that activity has really minimized, but it will, we've been told it will never go away. It'll just be controlled. And the more active the abutters, the shore people are, the less has to be done because they're on top of it more. Where Horseshoe is not as active. So you really get into the herbicide treatment and stuff. As far as I know, it will never stop.
Right.
I do have an email here that I want to read into the record regarding this, and it's from Representative Chris Christensen. Being a member of the New Hampshire Exotic Aquatic Weeds and Species Committee since 2003, I write in support of the expenditure of town funds and the acceptance of grant funds from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for the purpose of the aquatic invasion species management in Horseshoe Pond and Natticook Lake. These two water bodies are available to all Merrimack residents for recreational purposes, and every effort should be made to maintain the quality of these waters. As a trustee of the trust funds, I note that the Capital Reserve Fund for Milfoil Management, as of February 28, 2018, had a balance of $34,594.06. The New Hampshire House of Representatives is scheduled to meet on March 8th to meet deadlines, so I do not know if I can be at your meeting to personally address this public hearing. Remember, this was originally scheduled for March 8th anyway. In my absence, I ask that the thoughts expressed in this letter be entered into the record. Thank you, Representative Chris Christensen. So, okay, yes.
I recognize that it's an ongoing thing. I think I've heard that a number of times. But I was wondering, where we get it 2 years in a row, do they anticipate a couple 3-year reprieve, or do we have any idea?
I don't have any information on that.
Okay.
Yes, Eileen?
From what I have heard over the years, because we seem to have had, until now, a revolving door on your 2 positions, because they've moved on, not because they don't like working here, but
I'm glad you clarified.
but because it appeared to me through my observations of those requests that you do a couple of years of the herbicidal, and then a year or so of just the pulling, the dash thing that he was talking about. And then they'd have to come back with the herbicide. And I think that the state probably determines, what the processes are by doing the evaluation.
Mm-hmm. And then also, the fund, according to Chris, is $34,000. I know, was it $10,000 we put in this coming up budget? So we'll have about $2,000 left in it when we're done this work. Or
We'll have around $15,000.
From 30? Oh, yeah. the
30,
matching fund.
34,
Sorry, 38
29.
plus. Yeah, I didn't take out the 9,000.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, all set?
Do you have to open up the hearing, Madam Chair?
Yep. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll open up at 7:34. My pen just ran out of ink. Okay. Well, that's what this says. 8:34. That's what the clock says. I think I need to retire for the night. Okay, make that 8:34, and I'm going to close it at 8:35.
Madam Chair, I would move that the town council vote to accept and authorize the expenditure of up to $38,348 for the milfoil treatment program at Horseshoe Pond and Natticook Lake, of which $9,587 is from a grant from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for milfoil control via dash/herbicide, and the town's portion is $28,761 to be funded from the milfoil expendable capital reserve fund. And furthermore, and by the way, Mr. Price, I'm impressed because this is exactly how I say it, and you wrote it. Very impressed. And furthermore, that the town council authorizes the town manager or her delegate to execute any and all documents which may be necessary pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by
Second.
Peter Albert.
It's close. He says designee normally.
Yeah, it's subtlety in the language. I wasn't going to
And
quibble over it, but I
Arthur.
was
He's
impressed.
going to write that down for future reference.
I am going to write it down for future.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. 6-0-0.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
now,
And
thank
Kelly?
you very much.
And Kelly, welcome to Merrimack, and you survived your first town council meeting.
Okay, now we move on. Legislative updates and state reps. Now town managers report.
I believe that this first item relates to what the Traffic Safety Committee first talked about, which is talking about Executive Park Drive and the traffic signal. So that's all been discussed, I'm sure. Then the second one is, I'm not sure if you said this either, Tom, and I apologize. The planning board granted conditional approval for the site plan of the mixed-use development at Merrimack Park Place near the Merrimack Premium Outlets on March 6th. The site plan calls for 372,800 square feet of development, including retail, hotel / event center, restaurant, office, multifamily residential uses in accordance with the mixed-use development conditional use permit approved by the Planning Board in 2017. And that's all.
All set. Okay, there is no consent agenda and there is no old business. On to new business. And what? Oh, Paul's going to do. Okay, sponsorship donation of Parks and Rec Department summer movie nights. Town Council to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a donation in the amount of $600 from the Merrimack Lions Club to the Parks and Recreation Department to sponsor 2 summer movie nights in the park, pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe this is the 3rd year that Parks and Rec is actually doing movie nights in the park, and they'll be held, as you said, at Abbey Griffin. This year there'll be 2 movies sponsored by the Lions Club. One will be Friday, June 8th, Murder on the Orient Express, and Friday, June 27th, The Lion King. The $600 that the Lion Club donates covers the licensing fee that we have to pay for publicly showing the outdoor movies. And once again, the movies will be at Abbey Griffin Park, and there will be rain dates associated with it. And I do not know if that's the original Orient Express or the one that just got published.
Or the remake.
Or the remake, so.
All I know that these are really well attended.
They are.
And the
Very
more
attended.
that the word gets out, the more people attend. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept and expend.
I'm going to try
Was-
this.
Go for it, Peter. You can also say so moved.
So moved.
Motion
Very
made
good,
by
Councilor
Peter
Albert.
Albert. It's already been read by me, so, and seconded by Tom Thornton. You've got it. You've got it down, Pat, now. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. 600. Okay, town treasurer appointment. Now, who are you going to talk about, Paul? Okay. Town council to consider appointing the deputy finance director as town treasurer in accordance with RSA 41:26-E, RSA 669:17-D, and RSA 37. Go right ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the April vote in 2017, we had the town charter changed where it would allow the town council to appoint a town treasurer. The town treasurer's appointment, the elected town treasurer's appointment is ending as of April 10th, 2018. So at that time, we thought it would be a good idea to bring forward the recommendation for the town council to appoint a town treasurer. The deputy finance director has extensive knowledge of working with me, dealing with banking and things of that sort, working with the banks, getting the best interest rates, and actually, he's helped me out this year quite a bit to get better interest rates, and that's why our interest rates and our interest income, as you have seen in the reports, have come forward. Based on the code, it says that the town board has to ask, first of all, you have to ask the appointee if he's interested in the position. And then if he is interested in the position, then you can appoint him to the position of town treasurer. And at the same time, what I'm recommending is that we use the $1,300 that we pay our current town treasurer per year and offer that to the new appointed treasurer by the town council. And make the appointment effective the 11th of April 2018. Because as of midnight on April, after the elections as of midnight, we no longer have a treasurer for the town.
Okay. Peter?
I take it
You've
spoken to the
asked.
appointee?
What?
I take it you've spoken
Oh,
to the
yeah, I have,
appointee?
and actually I should say that
In the audience?
he is in the audience. The deputy finance director, Thomas Boland, is in the audience, and You can, he's got his tie on tonight, so, but you
I
can
know.
ask him if he will accept the appointment. Yes, but I have talked to him about it. I'm not blindsiding him yet.
Any other questions? Tom?
Paul, included in this packet is a new description of the Deputy Finance Director's job work and stuff like that. And in bold, it says, if appointed as treasurer, the following apply, and there's 6 different additional items. And I guess I'm curious how much of this is new work that the person is being asked to do above and beyond what the Deputy Finance Director might already be doing in oversight of the current appointed or elected town treasurer.
Item number 2, which says establish and maintain controls of all town bank accounts. The person's name would be added to the bank accounts. Right now, his name is not on the bank accounts. It's just myself and the treasurer. Signing the checks would be a new function to him. But having his name
his
on the
signature
slip,
show up on the
signature
checks, yeah.
We do forecasting of cash flows in the department right now, but it would take, his duties would take that on a permanent basis and be more responsible for it. Whereas right now I do it and I run it by him and we go over it together. He would be doing it and then running them by me to see what our cash flow needs are going to be. And the investing, we're really tied to our investing policies and to money market CDs and things of that sort. If I had a person, we could do more forecasting of CDs, which we don't do now, putting the money, tying up the money for shorter periods of time into a CD and trying to earn higher interest rates. And that goes along with the cash forecasting. So having a person in-house, it'd be a lot easier to work with, so that would be one of the new functions as well in some of the investing.
So I guess the reasoning for my question is one of the kind of background thoughts in going to an appointed person as opposed to an elected person is that the finance department is already overseeing all these things that the elected official did, because we didn't necessarily have an elected official who had specific financial background. To say, not to denigrate the current person holding that position, but an elected person doesn't necessarily have those backgrounds. And so the finance department has already been doing all of these jobs, either you or the deputy or somebody else all along. And so if we appoint the deputy to this position, it doesn't really feel like there's any added burden on them of work. And so I'm wondering why we would increase his pay $1,300 a year, because part of what we're doing is trying to save funds by going with an appointed individual instead of who's already being paid to do the job, as opposed to an elected official.
A lot of those things that you talked about is he will be taking those functions away from me and actually doing them and being responsible for them.
Oh, take it out of his salary.
Sure. That's okay. All right.
Not so
Talk
much.
about, don't worry.
I'm
We
not
see
trying
the,
to steal
we see
money
the
from
tires
anybody.
on your back, so.
Right. You know, hold on. Let me stretch a little bit, try to move that knife. But no, a lot of those responsibilities now lie directly on the person, and there'll be added responsibilities for the investing, whereas before they were on me, and I would talk to the treasurer and say, this is what we want to do. And because the treasurer didn't have the financial
Acumen.
thank you, he would agree. Now the suggestions would be coming directly from the person. So there was an additional responsibility being added, and that's why I suggested the $1,300.
Okay. It seems to me like it's just an extension of the job he's been doing all along, whether directly or indirectly, and I'm not totally inclined at this point to support that portion.
Bill?
Question for either Eileen or Paul. Was the prior town treasurer provided a stipend for his services, and if so, what was the amount?
The $1,300.
$1,300.
Yes. And that's been, since I've been here for 13 years, the treasurer's been getting $1,300. A year.
And in previous times, it's been kind of indicated the treasurer really didn't do a whole lot and didn't necessarily even come in and look at the books.
Right.
Not necessarily the current person, but previous individuals in that position were paid $1,300 because that's what the program was. And they wrote their name once and it was stamped onto every check and things of that nature. And that was about the extent of my understanding of their involvement in
Yeah.
what was going on.
I agree.
But when we had this conversation prior to putting to the ballot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Chair, I thought at least there was a consensus amongst the council at that particular time, the need to professionalize that particular position. That by having somebody appointed to that particular position, we would have that level of, to use my word, that level of acumen, that level of expertise necessary for the person to execute the job as town treasurer, whereas previously,
Which is what you said.
it was, I hate to say it, previously, it was just putting your name on the.
Which
on
is
the-
what Tom said. I agree with you.
Right.
Right.
So, I apologize for being redundant.
That's all right.
I think, we're increasing the deputy finance director's duties. I don't think the compensation is unreasonable for what we're asking him to do.
Okay, go ahead,
You know,
Tom.
let me, and I guess I would agree 100% if we were going out and finding somebody who wasn't already part of that department, found somebody in assessing or something like that and decided to appoint them to the treasurer, because that would give them a completely new and different job requirement. Or if we hired somebody like our current tax assessor to come in and fill that position, we'd have to pay them something for doing that effort. I guess I'm a little bit hesitant to increase the salary of an employee in the town when they're doing the jobs that they were normally doing, except for because of, you know, wonderful behavior and terrific opportunities and jobs and things of that nature, the kinds of raises that might be given out by the town manager at some point in time, no matter what, because of the job that they're performing. For us to just say that, you know, you're doing your job, thanks, here's an extra how much dollars, just seems a little bit far-fetched to me.
Eileen?
I feel like I'm the President of the United States or something. I often look at these kinds of things as relating to additional responsibilities. So the buck's going to stop at Tom now, whereas before it was not his. The buck did not stop at Tom's door. He had to defer to somebody else, and now it's his ultimate responsibility to be the treasurer of the town. And if something is not done properly, it goes right onto his shoulders. So, in my opinion, when a person takes over an additional level of responsibility that they never had before, that it would be appropriate to compensate them for that.
Peter?
So, going to this debate, so currently, does Tom already perform the monthly reconciliations of all the town's bank accounts?
Yes, and he does it for the finance department.
Okay. And so going down 1 through 6, is he already do that, or is any of this actually new to Tom now?
A lot of it is new. Number one, he does because of the town's function of reconciling the bank statements.
So, Paul, how many of these 1 through 6, rather than me sitting here reciting them, is new to Tom's responsibilities?
2, 3, semi-4, semi-5, and 6.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll split the vote, if I could, Madam Chair, 2 different votes, that the Town Council consider appointing the Deputy Finance Director as Town Treasurer in accordance with RSA 41:26-E, RSA 669:17-D, and RSA 37.
Okay, so the actual appointment is the one.
Just the appointment.
And you're seconding?
Well, I will, but I was actually, are we supposed to now, is this one of those rules that you have to ask him, or?
You need to ask him if he's going.
Oh.
First you have to determine whether you're gonna give him any money and then decide.
We are negotiating here? So we literally have to formally ask if he's interested?
By the RSA.
Oh, should I call him up? Why don't you come on up? Come on down.
Should we do this in reverse then? Should we have his other motion first?
Yeah, we did. What about the pay? So we have to ask first, then do the motion? You are formally being requested. Are you interested in this position?
I am.
As town treasurer?
I am.
Yes, you are. Affirmative response. Okay, based upon that response, you have made the motion. And I have a second by Finley. Any other questions or debate? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. 600. Now for the second motion. Bill.
Madam Chair, I would move.
Bill, your
Turn on your mic.
Thank you, appreciate it. Give me a second, please. Madam Chair, I would move that the position of Deputy Finance Director, assuming the responsibilities as Town Treasurer, that we recommend that we add an additional 63 cents for 2,080 total work hours a year, which to his hourly rate, which comes out to the same as the elected treasurer of $1,300 a year, to compensate for these additional responsibilities.
Second.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by Peter Albert. Yes, Eileen.
I hate to be overly technical, but the memo really shouldn't have talked about hourly increases. It should have, I didn't write it up, so don't look at me like that. So the Tom is a salaried employee, so you would be adding $1,300 to his annual wages.
Friendly amendment.
It'll be $1,300 per year. And you agree to this?
I agree.
You all set? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. So that is 5-1-0. Tom Koenig. Tom Koenig in opposition. 5-1-0. That passes. Thank you very much and congratulations.
All right.
Don't spend all
Congratulations,
that money.
Oh,
In one
Okay.
place.
thank you
one
very
place.
much.
You can go on your Tahiti vacation now. Okay, minutes.
Madam Chair, I move the Thursday, January 25th, 2018 minutes as
Wait,
presented.
From this one, so we have to abstain. Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by
Second.
Peter Albert. Any
Question.
changes?
Question,
Yeah.
page 3, line 18, I had requested that the test records be entered into the record. They were not attached to the copy that was provided to us tonight. I see a hyperlink on there. Is it fair to assume that that hyperlink is going to be the test record? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Make sure that
Thank you.
Any other? Yes, John?
I wasn't here.
Correct.
So
Neither was I.
I was fascinated by it. But as I was reading through it, I found at least one, I'll check to see if there are others, but on page 9, line 17, it says, I'll read the whole sentence, "It is not the right thing to be funding education with, and it is feeding into someone's addition." And I think he meant addiction.
Addiction, that's correct. Thank you.
And so,
Good catch.
I was having trouble with someone's addition, sorry. And then, just for my own information and clarity, on page 14, the motion at the top on line 9, 10 ends with the motion to move Chapter 92 to engrossment. And I hadn't ever heard that term used before. I was wondering if someone could help me understand.
Engrossment, make into law. Make into an ordinance.
We've never talked about doing that before, so it means what?
To make into law, or to make into an
Okay,
ordinance.
these are ordinances, or chapters of the town code. It just seems like an overly complicated word for that, but if that's what you said, then that's fine. Thank you.
Any other changes? Okay, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstention? I was
Abstain.
absent, and so it's going to be 402. Tom Koenig and Nancy Harrington abstaining. January 29th.
Madam Chair, move the Monday, January 29, 2018 Town Council meeting minutes as presented.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by Tom Thornton. Any changes? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. 600. February 8th.
Madam Chair, I move the, hold on a second. Sorry, I apologize. Madam Chair, I move the Thursday, February 8, 2018 Town Council meeting minutes with one minor change or suggestion, if possible.
Okay, why don't I get a second, and you can tell us what that is. Second,
Second.
Tom Thornton. Go right ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During the context of talking about my letter in support of Senate Bill 309 FN, which starts on page 8, line 4, throughout the context of the conversation, I kept referring to Article 8. On page 10, line 24, Councilor Rothaus corrected me, is that it was Article 28A that I was referring to, which is correct. Is it possible throughout the narrative from page 8 to 10, where it says Article 8, that you put Article 28A in parentheses to actually clarify that that was the article that I actually meant, so that people have some understanding and it gives context to what Councilor Rothaus was saying on page 10?
Well, the correction, it seems like the correction makes a statement that all previous times that you've said that is corrected by this.
I understand that, but if people
So-
are reading it and it says Article 8, Article 8, Article 8, and then they read Finley, he says, well, Finley, I think he's talking about Article 28A.
Which corrects the previous
Corrects the
one.
previous. I'm
But
trying
you
to-
can't go back and change what
I
you
just want to put into
faxed.
parentheses to, I can't do that to reference it?
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't see why not, but I don't know.
Okay. I mean, I'm not against
I'm
that.
just trying to
Maybe you
clarify
could
it so
put it in
that.
parentheses.
That's
just
what
put
he's
it in
suggesting.
It's
Yeah.
just put in parentheses next to, I'm not asking
back.
to
I
change
think
it to
that would be
Article
fair.
20. I'm asking to just put
I
Article 8
understand.
parentheses, Article 28A,
I
so
have no
that.
problem with that. Anybody have a problem with that?
I have no problem with it.
Because
Thank
when
you.
you get to the correction, then that will explain the
Exactly.
parentheses.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Made me feel smart, because when he used engrossment back during that meeting, I was a little clueless myself, so.
But Tom
told-
asked the question you didn't.
Well, he
But
did
you'll
tell us
use
that
it-
meeting, but,
But you'll use that in the future.
no. No.
I'll be sure to use it at least once. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, 600. Comments from the press.
Could I make a comment on the minutes first?
Oh, absolutely, yep.
Just to make a statement, if you will. Going back to the minutes of January 25th, which was the meeting that I wasn't here, there was apparently quite a bit of discussion about PFOA and a lot of concern over whether or not the planning board should or should not have sent a letter to Flatley talking about the contamination issues there in support of the DES letter and things of that nature. And there's a quote in here that Tom Koenig stated that PFOA contamination is a controversial subject. It's not known how much impact low levels cause. He's concerned about unnecessarily raising red flags. It then talks about lower property values will have achieved the same end. I'm not sure what that's trying to say, but relative to why I took that position, I felt like because we had already approved the plan, it was no longer a part of the planning board's function and requirements to send a letter of that nature. DES had done it. Consequently, the town council did it because it was requested. And I think those are the appropriate boards to try and approach a developer in town to make a decision after they've already gone through and gotten their approvals, which is why I talked about not sending a letter from the planning board. So just to try and clarify my position and what we were doing there. But I was acting in my own opinion at that point about how the planning board should respond to people, and may or may not have been the right thing, but that's what I did, just to try and clarify. Thanks.
Okay, comments from the press? None. Comments from the public? Seeing none. Comments from the council? Finley.
Thank you, Nancy. I was at the school district deliberative session, and during their budget process, they added $6,000 to the resource officer's position, and that's all well and good, but and they've done it, and the money's there, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the resource officer is actually an employee of the town, and that probably should have come out of our budget, and if that's what the chief was desirous of having done, and I suspect she would be supportive of it. It didn't seem like necessarily a bad thing, but I thought it somewhat inappropriate that it was handled at that level. So I don't know if something should be made mention.
And that was for additional training, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Any opinion? Go ahead, Early.
I don't think that it does any harm, but I think that unless the chief approves the certain training and that she determines that the officer is available and not, interfering with his other duties besides being an SRO, that money can be spent, but according to her and in whatever time frame that she feels that it's appropriate.
Okay. I just know back when the position originated, there was conversation of whose budget the position would come out of, whether it would be the school district or the town.
And I agree with you. It probably isn't appropriate, but it's of no harm, really.
Right, and I didn't see it as
But for the
that,
future, but I think what you're kind of saying is that some of this is starting to slip over to the school district, and it shouldn't.
Right, and because I didn't pay attention to their budget meetings or anything. I don't know if the chief was in fact approached about it, and so I'm just not sure. But okay. Thanks.
One other point to add on: it wasn't the school board that put the $6,500 in; it was the budget committee that added it after the fact.
You're right.
It was
yes.
$6,500 that was added after the fact.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it was the budget committee and not the school board itself.
So it was six, maybe, I don't know, I thought it was 6,000, but it's in, yeah. So, okay, thank you.
Any other? John?
Eileen mentioned this already, but I want to just amplify it. We did, as a planning board, we did approve the Merrimack Park Place CUP development, where they're planning to put in a hotel, some residential buildings, and a fair amount of retail and office space over time. They also, that's phase one, split into 3 to 5 segments. There was a lot of work and a lot of discussion going on. There was a lot of commitments made by the developer, the owner of the land, to work with the town, to work with the neighbors, to do the best they can to shield that piece of commercial property, commercial industrial property from the residential property that abuts it, and to do the best they can to avoid damaging or harming any of the trees or buffer zone between the buildings, the houses that are there, and the development. I think from a perspective of the town itself, it's going to be a nice addition to the town. We went through a lot of discussions over exactly what they're planning to do and how they're planning to do it, what kind of construction, what kind of management, what kind of overall facility they want to build in there. And I think in conjunction with the premium outlets, the hotel being a name brand hotel, the residential units being managed, not sold, and things of that nature, that we're going to see a nice quality product. The developer is also wanting to work with the town to try and arrange their parking issues to do the best benefit to both the neighborhood and the project itself. And so I think it's a very positive thing going forward, and I'm looking forward to the implications of it, to the implementation of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Tom Koenig, second by Tom Thornton. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. 600. Thank you.